Welcome back, everyone. This is Dave from Korman Productions, here to do another rewatch video of Quantum Leap, Season 2, Episode 1, titled Honeymoon Express. The episode's description reads as follows. Sam must save himself while on his honeymoon from his new bride's ex-husband. Also, Congress wants Sam to change history by stopping the U-2 flight that was shot down over Russia in 1960. The episode takes place on April 27th, 1960, was directed by Aaron Lipstad, and aired on September 20th, 1989. Before going any further, I will tell you a couple of things. 1. This is not a spoiler-free video, so if you haven't watched this episode yet, please go and check it out, and then watch my video. Secondly, if you like this video, please like, share, comment, and subscribe to my channel. Now, you might have noticed that it's been a couple of weeks since I've done a video, and part of that is, one, because I got sick during the first week, which made it hard to actually do a video, because a lot of it relies on my voice, and I sounded like a frog. And then I started experiencing car problems, which made me not quite in the mood to perform a video. But now that some of my personal issues have cleared, I am back, and I'm going to be doing the next month of Quantum Leap videos. I'm putting This Is Us, my videos on that series, on the shelf for a little bit. This episode seems like a good opportunity to discuss production order versus airing order. It was my initial impression that this episode was intended to be the season finale of Season 1, which is actually not borne out by evidence. I'm not sure why I was under that impression, other than that this episode feels like a finale. But according to production order, it actually wasn't supposed to air until deep into Season 2. After Play It Again Seymour, we see a preview of Sam leaping into a female, which was indeed supposed to be the next episode. What Price Gloria, which is the episode that Sam for the first time leaps into a female, was supposed to be the season premiere of Season 2. If you stream this series on Bravo, you'll note that both What Price of Gloria and A Portrait for Troyan are put under Season 1, and they were actually filmed during the course of Season 1, which means that A Portrait for Troyan would have actually been the season finale of Season 1, and what a terrible way that would have been to end Season 1. Because A Portrait for Troyan is a portrait of a bad episode. One that I cannot wait to talk about because I can't wait to trash it. But we got a little ways to go before talking about that episode. Honeymoon Express was moved up to be the season premiere of Season 2. And I think that was a good choice. It feels like a season finale, but it also works as a decent season premiere. We open up in an unusual way. We're in the future with Al, in the quickest that he actually appears in an episode, even quicker than Genesis. He's at a committee questioning whether funding for Quantum Leap should continue. And the lead committee member is questioning whether Al is claiming that God has taken over the project. For the longest time, I was under the impression that the lead committee member was played by Jason Robards, but that was an incorrect impression, as he is played by Warren Frost. In addition to his appearance here, he was also in Psycho 4, The Beginning, 30 appearances on the show Twin Peaks, as well as appearances in the follow-up material on the show, including the recent revival series, 2 episodes of the Stand miniseries, which I remember quite fondly. He was a doctor in that series, if I recall correctly. 18 episodes of Matlock, and 5 episodes of Seinfeld. He died on February 17th, 2017, at the age of 91. The committee is expressing skepticism at the possibility that God has taken control of Sam's leaps and is using him to put right what once went wrong. The lead chairman lists off examples of where Al claims Sam has been, all of which have come from the first season. And given the fact that this was shot deep into Season 2, This is interesting. My guess is that this framing device was filmed well after the fact. He lists leaping into a pilot, which was the first ever episode, as well as helping nuns build a chapel, and being involved in the integration of a small town, which is a charitable reading of The Color of Truth. That's not quite what happened there, but whatever. The lead chairman says that this is commendable, but not exactly earth-shattering changes, and not worth the millions upon millions that it costs to maintain the project. One of the other committee members laments the fact that Sam has not changed anything significant for $43 billion. The least he could do is influence the results of the last election. Al says that Sam's Swiss cheese memory makes it so Sam can only recall certain things, and that he can only change things that God wants changed. One of the other committee members asks why inspiring Buddy Holly's song was worthy of God's attention. And if you recall, that is my exact reaction to that episode that he questions. Al responds that God works in mysterious ways, which the lead chairman fires back with, evidently, so does this project. The chairman goes on to ask, are you the only one who has had physical contact with Dr. Beckett since he supposedly started leaping in time? And Al says, of course, no. He hasn't had physical contact. He's only interacts with Sam as a hologram. And so, Al is the only one who can verify that these events have ever taken place. Now, I do have one quibble. In Starcrossed, Al got in trouble for helping Sam try to win back the love of his life, or to make it so maybe she wouldn't leave him at the altar. So it seems to me that other people were aware of Sam Beckett actually being in the past, while it's claimed here that that's not the case. So that seems to be a bit of a contradiction of what we've seen in prior episodes. The chairman goes on to say that for $43 billion, they can't just take the word of one man, even as one as decorated as Al himself. Al goes on to say that if they kill this project, they will not have only ended the greatest experiment in humankind, but leave a good man stranded. And the senator responds, he won't be alone. He'll have God. And credits. Pretty fantastic opening. It's a good way to reintroduce the series to the current fans, as well as bringing in new fans. After the credits, we join Sam in a tree, trying to get a cat out, while Al floats in the air. I like the implication that there are other leaps that we are not privy to, perhaps ones that aren't quite so life and death, ones that maybe don't take quite so long. I kind of wished that the leap we saw in How the Test Was Won was a leap that we didn't see. Al starts babbling about stopping a revolution, stopping Fidel Castro from taking over Cuba. The only problem is that doesn't occur for 3 years. And Sam, who's struggling to get the cat out of the tree, asks, don't tell me that Ziggy has changed his mind about what he's here to do. And Al says that parallel human hybrid computers do not change their mind. He still thinks Sam is there to conduct a heroic rescue of this cat. So, what happened to the cat when Sam wasn't there to save it? Just curious. Anyway, Sam ends up falling out of the tree, the cat goes with him, bounces off his chest and into the arms of the old lady. And the old lady looks at Sam and says, sarcastically, my hero, before Sam leaps. And it should be noted that this is one of the few episodes of the series that features more than two leaps. The leap in, the leap out. Sam leaps in, and he's making out with a pretty gorgeous woman. Well, that's a nice entry, unlike his usual entries. The woman in question is Diane McBride, played by Alice Adair, who only has 10 credits to her name, which surprised me because she's pretty serviceable in this episode. Not great, mind you, but serviceable. And she's pretty easy on the eyes. Her credits include an appearance on Miami Vice, Beverly Hills Cop 2, the soap opera As the World Turns, and her last appearance was in a short film called Rideshare in 2015. The Honeymoon Express theme that plays in this episode kind of drives me a little bit crazy. I'm not really fond of that particular musical cue. It's just way too much 80s cheese for my tastes. Which is funny because also in the same episode is a musical theme that they use for the action beats that I rather do enjoy. Their kiss is interrupted by a staff member, played by Hank Rolicki, who was featured in the first two Rocky films. He died on October 14, 2002, at the age of 75. Anyway, after being in bliss by making out with a hot girl, Sam finally realizes where he's at, which is on another man's honeymoon. He reacts with his famous catchphrase, "Oh boy." The staff member tells him not to be embarrassed, that in his long time of serving on the Honeymoon Express, he's seen more than kissing. My question is there no locks on the Honeymoon Express? Do they just knock and open the door? Sam ends up acting extremely awkward, and is doing everything he can not to be alone with this woman, which is behavior that confuses the staff member, whose name is Porter, by the way. He seems to think that this is crazy white person behavior. As the credits continue to play, Diane is continuing her efforts, aggressively so, to have her way with her newly minted husband, and Sam keeps trying to get away, going as far as to go into the bathroom, where he looks at his mirror image and apologizes to the man he leaped into for not exactly having the honeymoon that he intended. No kidding on that one. Sam checks his wallet and discovers that he's a cop, and then also realizes that he has both his gun and his handcuffs, and Sam wonders, in his little narration monologue, why would a cop bring his gun and handcuffs? Oh, poor naive Sam. It sounds pretty kinky to me. Sam exits the bathroom, which is when Diane notes, and by the way, Sam has leaped into Tom McBride, that he packed her book on torts. Will the kink never end? No, Diane is actually studying for the bar exam, and Tom, being the thoughtful guy that he was, or is, packed her studying material. They start making out again, despite Sam's resistance, but it's pretty clear that Sam is very much into it. Wouldn't you be? Which is when they are interrupted by Al. Sam gets out of doing anything further with Diane by suggesting that she study. Al and Sam make their way out to the corridor so they can have a private conversation, and Sam uses the opportunity to complain that he is on his honeymoon as a newlywed with a wife that is a complete stranger to him. Al, of course, does not see the problem. Walking to somewhere else in an equally abandoned part of the train, Al explains to Sam that he is there to prevent the U-2 from getting shot down. The Russians are going to shoot it down. Not the rock group, as Sam speculates, but the super-duper secret spy plane. Sam says he doesn't remember, and Al points out, why should he? He was only 6 years old at the time. Al goes on to explain the impact that the U-2 getting shot down created, and Sam skeptically asks, and I am here to change that? All Sam has to do is get Ike, the President of the United States, to drop the mission. Sure thing, Al. That sounds like a cinch to me. And Sam asks a legit question. How does a New York cop get the President of the United States to drop an important mission? And apparently, the answer is Diane McBride. Her father is a U.S. Senator and Ike's golfing buddy. And Sam asks once again, and this is what Ziggy says I'm here to do. Al starts to nod, but then admits the truth. Not entirely. And what's interesting to me here is that Al does not lie to Sam. He could easily continue to lie to Sam. He could easily do so. Lie to Sam and continue to push his own agenda. Later on in future episodes, the hand link will start making noises to alert Sam that Al is not being entirely truthful with him. But that's not the case here. It doesn't have that capability yet. You could even argue that Al has a decent moral argument for lying to Sam here. As if he doesn't get Sam to do this, the project is going to get shut down, and Sam will lose contact with Al, which means no more help from the project. He will be on his own. He doesn't lie here, but at the end of the season, Al will, in a very big way. And we will get to that episode eventually, though we got a while to go before we do so. Al says that the opportunity is too big to pass up. Sam, who is annoyed at this point, asks Al, what does Ziggy say we're here to do? And Al is all like, well, since when do you give a crap about his opinion? Oh, I don't know. Since you started about talking global impact stuff. Which he thinks has something to do with something else, and Al is just simply refusing to tell him. And I love that Sam immediately sees straight through Al here. According to Ziggy, there's a 76% chance that he's here to help Diane pass the bar exam. Now, what's funny here is that this turns out to be what Sam is actually there to do. And there turns out to be a little bit more than that. But ultimately, this is both the solution to Sam leaping and to Al's problem, which is also Sam's problem. And Sam's all, now we're talking. How exactly do I go about doing that? Al goes on to be super duper unhelpful, explaining the facts of life, the bees, the trees, so on and so forth, about what Sam is going to do to Diane. And then says, when Diane goes to sleep, you whisper in her ear, you will get Ike to call off the mission. I don't see how any of this helps Diane pass the bar exam, but whatever. Al departs. We don't seem to do so, but we at least do hear the door effect. Sam has a brief conversation with Porter, who continues to be confused by Sam's white guy behavior. He rounds the corner to find his wife being abducted. He runs after her. Sam catches up to them, manages to grab his wife back, and the abductor pulls out a knife, which results in Sam pulling out his gun. After a moment, this convinces the abductor, well, I can't win here, so I'm just going to go ahead and put my knife away. Our villain here is Roger, and he's played by Matthew Carey, who seems to have made a career starring and writing French-made productions. And this appearance here in this Quantum Leap episode seems to be such a weird aberration in his Internet Movie Database that I moved to ask, How did they find this guy? Roger reaches into his pocket, and Sam starts to react by saying, with the gun, which causes the villain to smile. He's just pulling out a cigarette. He goes on to say to Diane that he had a dream about her last night. And this is when Sam realizes the two of them know each other. They apparently used to be married. He says in the dream they were making love in Germany, I guess. And before the act could be completed, Roger bled him out until the snow turned red. And Sam has had enough. Roger said the man looked like him, except that he had the look of someone who could kill. The person that Sam replaced absolutely could kill. He was a police officer. Sam has yet to have to do that in all of his leaps. Roger gets off the train, which isn't moving at this point, though it started to. And Sam peeks his head out the door and points the gun at Roger, like he's thinking about shooting the man, but ultimately decides against it, much to Roger's amusement. Well, Sam, you're not a cold-blooded killer. It's one of the reasons why I like you. So, there really wasn't much of a justification to just out and out shoot the man at that point. He's off the train. As far as you're concerned, he's not a threat at that point, though you know he's going to be again. But at this point, there is no moral or legal reason to shoot the man. We cut to Sam and Diane talking about the situation. Apparently, when they started dating, he was the very jealous type, and she thought it would get better when they got married. But instead it got worse. Yeah, if you have problems in your relationship, getting married is not a solution. He was very controlling, to the point where he wouldn't let her out to go shopping, or to get her hair done. Sam ends up physically comforting her. And then we cut back, or forwards, however which way you want to put it, to the present day scenes. Al at the committee meeting. The chairman informs Al that they are there to inform him of their decision. And Al pretty much knows that it's not going to be in his favor. But he's there to plead his case once more. He wants a 48-hour delay in the rendering of the verdict. The chairman is skeptical. He's saying that nothing is going to change over the weekend. And Al comes back with, except for history. Oh, touché. Al recounts the history of the U2 and claims that Sam is going to stop it. And the lead committee member says, if there are no changes, will you admit that Quantum Leap is a failure and go quietly into retirement? And Al agrees to this. Alright, let's talk a moment about what Al is trying to do here. Al is trying to get Sam to stop the U2 mission from happening. And my contention is simple. This isn't going to work. Even if he convinces Sam to do this, and even if Sam is successful, this will ultimately prove nothing. Why? Because history will change. That means people's memories will have changed. That means the record books will have changed. Oh, so you're claiming that Sam prevented this thing that never happened? That there's no record of happening? Ever? Anywhere? Okay. You know that white uniform that you're currently wearing? I got a better white jacket for you. Why don't you come with me? I mean, admittedly, it's a little uncomfortable and you're going to find your arms hard to move. But it sure does look good. And the thing is that Al's memories should change as well. So this thing he's trying to do, he's not even going to remember after Sam changes the event, if he successfully does so. There's more to this conversation, and I'm going to save it for the end. For the time being, I'm going to move on. But the point is that Al's scheme here is nothing but an act of desperation that is simply not going to work. We cut to Sam with Diane in the past, drinking in the car with a bunch of other passengers. Diane points out that one passenger is taking a drink, and it's a very French drink, which it kind of clicked into my mind where they could have found the actor who played Roger, because he is a French actor. So, and this episode is kind of based in Canada, so they probably went specifically looking for a French actor, and they found this guy, who has been in a bunch of French productions, as I've stated. Since he doesn't seem to have appeared in any other American productions, though, I'm still curious why he agreed to do this show. And I would like to get some background information on it, but I can't seem to find any at this time. Sam tells Diane that she reminds him of himself and his first train ride. Don't mind me, I just temporarily forgot how to talk. He was convinced in this train ride that everybody was out to get him. And she asks him, "How old were you?" And he responds, 2. Wow, okay. I certainly don't remember anything from when I was 2 years old. Diane says, at 2, it's appropriate to feel that way, not at 26. Well, maybe it's appropriate when it's true, which is your case, that someone is out to get you, because they are. You're not paranoid if someone actually is out to get you, is the expression. And Sam, of course, points this out. Sam uses his champagne glass to predict the future. She is going to go into politics, become president of the United States, and then be the first woman to give birth in the Oval Office, which of course makes Diane laugh. And Diane asks if that's how his mother used to calm him down, by making him laugh. And Sam says, nah, she would give me a book to read. And of course, she asks the obvious question. At 2 years old, she gave you a book to read? Yes, because Sam Beckett was a genius. The guy he leaped into, not as much. If she ever brings up these stories when Sam has leaped out, the guy is going to be very, very confused and not know what she's talking about. Al appears and gives us more information on what an amazing, brilliant little kid that Sam was, that Diane, of course, can't hear. Sam excuses himself to go to the men's room, which Al objects to, saying he's starting to feel like a pervert. Well, Al, you kind of are, but whatever. Diane says she'll be in the compartment, and is all seductive-like, and suggesting that maybe when they get back, something special might happen. Al goes on to try to figure out who Diane reminds him of. Which of his many wives? His 3rd, 4th, 5th? He's not really sure. And he goes on to say something about his 5th wife, Maxine, who's doing something with her nails, and I don't know, I'm trying to not even understand this dialogue. I mean, I could if I wanted to, but I'm trying not to, because I don't want to know. And Al says, how odd. And Al replies, that's funny, Sam. And Sam fires back, well, having your wife almost get abducted isn't. Whoa. Al didn't realize that was going to happen. And the reason why he doesn't is because research has been shut down. Because it's the end of the month, budget cuts, and your funding is going to get cut soon. And Sam replies, well, wait, you don't take money away from research. You know, sometimes I feel like nobody back there gives a damn. And Al replies, I do. and Sam, of course, knows that. Al asks him rather firmly, "Did you ask her, Diane, to call her father?" And Sam replies, "I have bigger problems." Al doesn't think so. And Sam replies, "Well, she was just trying to be kidnapped by somebody. Her crazy ex. And oh yes, there's the fact that I'm currently supposed to be this woman's husband, and I'm not. And she's going to expect me to sleep with her, and that's unethical. One, because it's immoral to sleep with somebody that you don't love." And much to everybody's surprise, Al agrees. And he says, "I love every single person I ever slept with at the time that I slept with them." So that's Sam's problem number one. Number two is, he is not her husband. And he's right to be concerned about that. Al's attitude here is pretty problematic viewed from a modern lens. But my ideal interpretation, as I've said before, is that Sam's mind is sleeping, not his body. But, as I've also said, the series itself craps on that. So it is in fact his body. He's just giving off a physical aura so he can be disguised as the person he's leaping into. It's kind of like, let's say, a low-tech way of wearing a mask. Like the Revenge of the Nerds scenario, where one of the nerds sleeps with a girl who she thinks is her boyfriend, but it's not. There's a word for that. It's not a good one. Now, Sam is not responsible for himself being here, although in the series finale, it is suggested otherwise. But it doesn't appear like Sam has control over where he goes, or the shoes he ends up filling. So it's not really his fault that he's there as this woman's husband who wants to sleep with him. He didn't create this scenario. But let's take the old-fashioned sense and assume that this would be the first time that they slept together. In the 1960s, that might have been probable. Even today, there are those who wait until they get married. So it's wrong on two levels. One, the bigger level of sleeping somebody under false pretenses. She thinks he is her husband, when he is in fact not. And two, if he does, he's denying the actual husband from being able to sleep with her for the first time. So Sam's attitude here seems like it may be too good to be true. It may seem to be kind of his Boy Scout nature. But he's absolutely right about the ethics here. During this scene, Sam suggests that it's not moral to sleep with somebody you don't love, and he doesn't love Diane yet. And he asks, "Wait, do I?" Okay, that's kind of a silly question, Sam. You've only known her for like 5 seconds. You're not in love with her. You could be in lust with her. You're definitely infatuated with her. And given from what I've seen of her, I don't blame you. But there is no way that you are in love with her. Anyway, Al continues to be unhelpful and says that he should just take one for the team and go in there and sleep with her. We cut away using a train as a transition shot. We don't see Al leave. Sam enters the compartment where Diane is once again eager to sleep with him. He tries a crazy tactic to prevent this situation by admitting the truth that he is in fact Sam Beckett, and she thinks he's referring to the playwright. Sam, confused, thinks he doesn't think so, but he's not totally sure. Maybe he is a playwright. Anyway, she takes this to be role-playing. Sam starts to give into it a little bit when Diane looks out the window and spots Roger somehow with the train moving as fast as it was and she freaks out, saying that Roger somehow caught up with them. And how? And Sam replies, I don't know, bus, train, who knows? He puts on his gun and gets ready to go and confront Roger. And Diane is freaking out, saying, he'll kill you. And Sam replies, nobody's gonna kill me. Diane continues to argue against anything that Sam is doing, and says that none of it's gonna work, and starts to bring up a legal case before Sam comforts her. On the way to confront Roger, Sam bumps into a man who steals his gun. Sam finds Roger sitting casually in the train. He ends up sitting down with him. And Roger asks, do you think Diane married you because you're a police officer? Subconsciously seeking a protector. Roger says he shared that theory with his therapist. He thought it was a strong possibility, along with the possibility that Roger is quite insane. And Sam seems to agree with that diagnosis. Roger points out that he loves Diane, and Sam says that he wants to possess her. That isn't love. Oh, but she took a vow, says Roger. And Sam points out she can leave and change her mind if she wants to. That's no longer a male privilege, pal. Roger points out that Sam doesn't seem to be afraid of him. And Sam says, nope. And Roger says, well, you should be. I'm going to kill you. And Sam says, no, you're not. But Al replies for Roger as he pops in and says, yes, he is, Sam. Tom McBride was found killed on this train. Well, thank you, Al. Thank you for being useful for once in this episode. Roger goes on to tell a story, a charming story, really, about how he was a rebel in Germany. And his mother basically sold out the rebels. So he showed up and shot her. Al urges Sam to take him, shoot him. And Sam reaches for his gun and realizes, whoops, it's not there. And so he gets up and walks away and quietly says to Al, they got my gun. Al tells him, as they walk away, that Ziggy says their best option is to radio ahead to New York about Roger, because he's actually wanted. Maybe for murdering that psychologist that he was just talking about. We don't know what became of him, exactly. And he says that they are supposed to lock themselves into their compartment and then get Diane McBride to call her daddy so that he can call Ike to postpone the mission. And Sam is beyond annoyed at this point. Can you get off that broken record, please? Al is finally so desperate that he resorts to telling him the truth. That if Sam doesn't change the U2 incident, they're going to shut down the project. And Sam says to him, well, that sounds like your problem. That's kind of a short-sighted view there, Sam. But Sam goes on to say, hey, in case you don't notice, I don't need the project anymore. They aren't leaping me around. God is. Al stops in his tracks. Sam continues on, closes the door, and then realizes what that actually means. He comes back out and says, if they shut the project down, we aren't going to be able to talk anymore. And Al tells him that this is going to be their last contact, unless Sam can prevent the U2 from getting shot down. And Sam says, I don't think I can make it without you. And Al says, I don't want to hear that. You can totally get around without me. I mean, in fact, in this episode, he's not even all that helpful. But you won't need to do that if you do what I'm telling you to do. It's a nice emotional beat for the two of them. It also happens to be their last interaction for the episode. Sam ends up taking Al's advice, in that he has the conductor call ahead about Roger, and then he goes to lock himself in the compartment, where he forces Diane to study for the bar exam, rather than engaging in nookie nookie. Before this, he also tries to get Diane to call her dad, but she can't, because he's in a place where he's unreachable. So once again, Al's plan was never, ever going to work. We cut to Sam and Diane studying together, when Sam notices that there's a foot outside the door. It's Roger trying to break into the compartment. The train suddenly comes to a stop. Roger gets in the door, and they find that they got out the window. A chase ensues with that musical cue that I said I liked so much. Sam ends up getting back on the train after getting off it, running to where I guess the captain or the boss of the train is, and he tells him that he needs a gun. After realizing that he's a cop, they grant his request. Sam goes and finds Diane. They start kissing, and then Roger points a gun at the back of his neck and tells him to toss the gun out the window. Well, that gun sure did him a lot of good. To prevent Tom from getting murdered, Diane agrees to go with him. This seems to fool Roger long enough for Sam to turn around and stab him with a knife. Roger looks shocked at this turn of events. He sits down and starts smiling. He tells Sam that the next time it will be easier to kill. We cut to the future scenes where Al looks dejected as the leader of the committee is reading from a textbook about the U2 incident, which was clearly not stopped. After the chairman finishes reading, Al continues to try to argue his case. But the committee member is basically like, look, you lost. Deal with it. Now sit down and take your medicine. We cut to Sam and Diane. Sam is helping her study for the bar exam on the train. And they're kissing and making out. And Sam says, hey, either leap me out of here, talking to God, or whoever is leaping him around in time, which he is assuming is God. Either leap me out of here, or look the other way. And then, Sam helps her, as in between kisses, with the questions, one of which she has gotten wrong. She is shocked to discover that she hasn't quite gotten this right. When she looks into it, she realizes that Sam is right, and that if she had gotten this wrong, it would have influenced half of her answers, causing her to lose, or rather, fail the bar. And when Sam gets this look on his face when he makes this realization, and at that point, he leaps. We cut to Al, who's in the middle of losing and taking his medicine, when suddenly, the committee member is no longer the guy played by Warren Frost, but he's magically transformed into Diane McBride, who is approving his request for Quantum Leap to continue getting funded, right before his eyes, and Al is amazed at this turn of events. Diane asks, hey, this Sam Beckett character sounds familiar. Any relation to the playwright? He sounds like someone I used to know, but she can't quite get her finger on it. Maybe it'll come to her in bed that night. Alright, so I skipped over a few things. During Al's scolding, or rather when Al was trying to defend himself and get the project more funding, he mentions Diane McBride. As it turns out, the senator who is trying to shut Quantum Leap down was a friend of Max Brown. But that friendship was kind of ruined when Diane McBride tried to run against the Warren Frost character, and he beat her because she failed the bar exam. Now that Sam has changed history, she didn't fail the bar exam, and thus she didn't get beaten out for the seat, the senator's seat. So now she is in his place, approving the funding for Quantum Leap, meaning that Sam's actual mission, beyond not getting killed, that Ziggy predicted about getting her to pass the bar exam, was the correct answer. Now, there's one more thing before I conclude this video. It's a worthy discussion here, in that Al should not have noticed that Diane McBride changed from the original history. He should have just remembered this as how it was playing out all along. Now, perhaps, and this would have to be the case in order for Ziggy to actually be able to detect changes in the timeline, the project has an aura around it which protects it from changes in the timeline, so that they can remember the original history, and as I said, notice the changes. I can buy that. I can buy being on site, that you wouldn't be affected by the timeline changes. I don't buy that that effect would extend outside of the project. For instance, it should not be in effect here. I have one possible explanation for how this could possibly be true, though it's kind of a weak explanation to me. That perhaps Al was not affected by the timeline changes because of his connection to Sam. The only way that Sam is able to see Al is by being connected from neurons and mesons. Their project was designed using their DNA, their neurons and mesons. So maybe Al is not affected by the timeline changes because of that. I'm not sure that's a great explanation. If any of my listeners or watchers have a better explanation, I would really enjoy hearing it. So anyway, that's the episode. And it's a pretty decent episode. A pretty okay, good way to begin Season 2. It's not spectacular. I enjoy the Al scenes in the present, though I will note that, once again, I'm pretty sure I mentioned this, the fact that there's no effort to make it seem futuristic. It seems to be set during contemporary settings. Like, we have the senator reading from a book, when in the future, there's probably more of an efficient way to get that information. I actually enjoy the B-plot with Al more so than I did the actual storyline of the episode. It's not bad, it's not great, it's kind of in okay territory for me. The Al and Sam interactions are great as usual. It's a decent watch. It's definitely not one to be skipped because of everything that goes on. And it's interesting to note for me, I'm not sure if I've said this or not, but this is the last time that the politics of the project are ever brought up. That was kind of a Season 1 thing that came up every once in a while. But after this episode, I can't recall another time where they even bring any of this stuff up. It's just not addressed ever again. So, next week, we will be looking at Disco Inferno. I actually don't remember if I liked that episode or not. It's been a number of years since I've been able to actually watch it, because it was not available on Netflix or Hulu for whatever reason. Anyway, if you like this video and want to support the channel, there are a number of ways to do so. You can follow me on Twitter at Korman Productions. You can join my Korman Productions Facebook page. You can buy something from the Korman Productions store on Zazzle. You can buy me a coffee, which is a new way to support content creators such as myself. And of course, you can like, share, and comment on this video, as well as subscribing to my channel. This is Dave from Korman Productions, signing off.